Hello there, and welcome to Sleepy Travel Stories. Tonight, we find ourselves transported to a place where time moves differently, where the air itself feels ancient, and where every breath seems to carry the weight of centuries. We're traveling to the ancient forests of Japan, places so old and so sacred that standing among them feels less like visiting a location and more like stepping into a living cathedral, one whose walls are made of bark and whose ceiling is woven from leaves and light. Picture yourself standing at the edge of one of these forests for the very first time. The moment you cross that threshold from open space into the embrace of the trees, everything changes. The temperature drops just slightly, enough to make you aware of your skin, of the coolness settling against your cheeks. The light, which was bright and ordinary just seconds ago, now becomes something else entirely, something filtered and soft, dappled and dancing. The Japanese have a word for this phenomenon, this interplay of light and shadow through leaves. They call it komorebi, and once you've witnessed it, once you've stood beneath a canopy of ancient cedars and watched the sunbeams paint patterns on the forest floor, you understand why they needed a specific word for such a specific beauty. The ground beneath your feet changes too. No longer the hard-packed earth of a trail or the solid surface of pavement. It becomes something yielding, something that accepts your weight with a gentle give. Moss covers nearly everything here, soft and impossibly green, creating a carpet so lush that it seems almost indecent to step on it. But step you must, carefully, reverently, aware that you're walking on something that has taken decades, perhaps centuries, to grow into this verdant perfection. And then there are the trees themselves. If you've spent your life in places where forests are young, where trees measure their ages in decades rather than centuries, your first encounter with these ancient Japanese forests will stop you in your tracks. These trees are not simply old. They are ancient beyond easy comprehension. Some of them were already towering giants when Japan was still finding its cultural identity, when the first emperors were establishing their courts, when Buddhism was just beginning its long conversation with Shinto beliefs. To stand before them is to feel impossibly young, impossibly brief, a momentary flicker in a story that stretches back through uncounted generations. But there's no melancholy in this recognition of your own smallness. Instead, there's something profoundly comforting about it. These forests, these ancient witnesses, have watched countless humans pass through their shadows. They've weathered storms that would have terrified you, survived typhoons and earthquakes, drought and deluge. They've stood silent and strong through wars and peace, through the rise and fall of dynasties, through every human drama you could imagine. And they're still here, still growing, still reaching toward the sky with a patience that makes our hurried human lives seem almost quaint. The forests of Japan are not all the same, though they share certain qualities that mark them as distinctly Japanese. There are the mountain forests of the mainland, where cedar and cypress trees climb the slopes in dense formations, their evergreen needles releasing that distinctive clean scent that seems to clarify your thoughts just by breathing it in. There are the coastal forests, where subtropical plants mingle with more temperate species, creating ecosystems of remarkable diversity. And then there are the island forests, particularly those of Yakushima, a small island south of Kyushu that contains within its compact landmass some of the most ancient and sacred forests in all of Japan. Let us travel there now, to Yakushima, to begin our journey among Japan's ancient trees. Close your eyes for a moment and imagine the journey. You've taken a ferry from Kagoshima, or perhaps a short flight that carried you over the deep blue waters of the East China Sea. As you approach the island, you notice how different it looks from the mainland. Mountains rise sharply from the coastline, their peaks often shrouded in mist and cloud. The island seems to generate its own weather, pulling moisture from the surrounding ocean and wrapping itself in it like a protective cloak. Yakushima is sometimes called the Island of Water, and as you step onto its shores, you begin to understand why. The air here is different. It's heavy with moisture, carrying with it the scent of rain even when no rain is falling. The island receives extraordinary amounts of precipitation, with the mountains getting over 390 inches of rain each year. For perspective, that's more than 3 times what notoriously rainy London receives. This abundance of water creates an environment unlike almost anywhere else on Earth. A primeval rainforest in a temperate latitude, a place where everything grows with an almost aggressive vitality. But we're not here for the coast, beautiful as it is. We're here for the forests that carpet the island's interior, for the ancient cedars that have made Yakushima famous among those who love old trees. So we make our way inland, perhaps by bus along winding mountain roads, perhaps on foot along one of the ancient trails that crisscross the island. The forest begins to close around us almost immediately. The roadside vegetation is dense and varied, a mix of subtropical and temperate species that shouldn't be able to coexist. but here, on this peculiar island, manage to thrive side by side. As we climb higher, the forest changes. The subtropical plants begin to fall away, replaced by the cedars and other conifers that dominate the higher elevations. The trees grow larger, older, more imposing. The moss becomes thicker, coating not just the ground, but the trees themselves, the rocks, the fallen logs. Everything is green, impossibly, overwhelmingly green. It's as if the color has weight, as if you could reach out and touch it, gather it in your hands. And then, perhaps at an elevation of around 500 meters, perhaps higher, you encounter your first yakusugi. Yakusugi is the name given to the ancient cedar trees of Yakushima, specifically those that are over 1,000 years old. Regular cedars, the kind you might find on Japan's mainland, typically live for 500 years or so. A respectable age, certainly, but not ancient. The yakusugi, however, living in this unique environment with its nutrient-poor granite soil, its constant moisture, its exposure to fierce typhoons, have developed characteristics that allow them to persist for millennia. Their wood is extraordinarily resinous, filled with aromatic oils that make it resistant to rot and insect damage. This same resin gives the wood a beautiful, deep color and makes it highly prized for construction. For centuries, these trees were harvested, their wood used for everything from roof shingles to temple pillars. You can still see the evidence of this logging scattered throughout the forest. Enormous stumps, some hollow, some with younger trees growing from their decaying centers, silent monuments to trees that fell centuries ago. One of the most famous of these stumps is known as Wilson's Stump, named after the British botanist Ernest Henry Wilson, who explored Yakushima in the early 20th century. This particular stump, hollow and enormous, dates back to the late 16th century, when the tree that stood here was felled to provide lumber for a temple in Kyoto. Stand inside this ancient remnant and look up. The hollow interior is large enough that several people can fit comfortably inside. And if you position yourself just right, the opening above forms a perfect heart shape against the sky. It's a reminder that even in destruction, these ancient trees retain a kind of beauty, a presence that persists long after their living form has passed. But we're not here to mourn the fallen. We're here to meet the survivors, the yakusugi that still stand, that still grow, that still reach toward the sky with an ambition that seems almost defiant. There are many famous yakusugi scattered throughout Yakushima's forests, each with its own name, its own character. There's the Buddha cedar, with its trunk that supposedly resembles the shape of a seated Buddha. There's the 1,000-year cedar, though in truth, it's likely much older than that. There's the husband and wife cedars, two ancient trees that have grown so close together that their trunks have fused at the base, creating a living symbol of partnership and endurance. But the most famous, the most revered, the most sought after of all the Yakusugi is known as the Jomonsugi. This tree, located deep in the island's interior, accessible only by a long and sometimes challenging hike, is considered the oldest tree in Japan. Scientists disagree about its exact age. Some estimates place it at around 2,000 years old. Others, based on different calculation methods, suggest it could be as old as 7,200 years. The truth likely lies somewhere in between, probably around 4,000 years, though even this conservative estimate is staggering in its implications. 4,000 years. Try to wrap your mind around that number. When this tree was a seedling, just beginning its long journey toward the sky, the pyramids of Egypt were still relatively new constructions. The Bronze Age was giving way to the Iron Age. Written language was still a novelty in most parts of the world. Every human civilization you've ever read about in a history book, every dynasty, every empire, every cultural flowering has occurred during this tree's lifetime. It has lived through it all, silent, patient, growing ring by slow ring, year by year, century by century, millennium by millennium. The hike to reach the Jomonsugi is not easy. It takes most people between 8 and 10 hours to complete the round trip, following a trail that includes sections of old logging railway tracks before ascending into the pristine forest where the ancient tree stands. But those who make the journey invariably describe it as one of the most profound experiences of their lives. Not just because of the destination, though the Jomonsugi itself is undeniably magnificent, with its massive trunk, its gnarled bark, its crown that spreads wide against the sky, but also because of the journey itself, the hours spent walking through this ancient forest, surrounded by trees that have stood witness to so much history, so much change, so much passage of time. The forest around the Jomonsugi is carpeted in moss. Not just a little moss, not just occasional patches, but a comprehensive, all-encompassing coating of moss that covers every available surface. There are over 600 species of bryophytes on Yakushima, making it one of the most moss-diverse places on Earth. As you walk, your eyes adjust to the endless variations of green. There's moss that looks like miniature cedar trees. There's moss that resembles delicate lace. There's moss that grows in cushions so soft and inviting that you have to resist the urge to lie down on them. There's moss that hangs in strands from branches, creating curtains that sway gently in the breeze. This abundance of moss is one of the defining characteristics of Yakushima's forests, and it plays a crucial role in the ecosystem. The moss holds moisture, creating microhabitats for countless small creatures. It provides a growing medium for other plants, including young trees that sometimes germinate and grow directly on the moss-covered trunks of older trees. It softens sound, creating that characteristic forest hush that makes every noise seem both distant and intimate. And it contributes to the overwhelming sense of age and timelessness that permeates these woods. Walking through this moss forest, particularly in the early morning when mist hangs low among the trees, feels like walking through a dream. The light is soft and diffused, filtered through multiple layers of leaves and mist. The air is cool and damp, carrying the scent of cedar and earth and growing things. Sounds are muffled, intimate. The call of a bird, when it comes, seems both very far away and very close. Your own footsteps are nearly silent on the soft, yielding ground. Time itself seems to slow, to become elastic, to lose its usual meaning in the presence of such ancient witnesses. But Yakushima is not the only place where Japan's ancient forests reveal themselves. The tradition of preserving and revering forests is woven deep into Japanese culture, particularly through the practice of Shinto, Japan's indigenous spiritual tradition. Throughout the country, you'll find what are called Chinju no Mori, the sacred shrine forests that surround Shinto shrines and serve as the dwelling places of kami, the spirits or deities that inhabit the natural world. These sacred forests are more than just decorative greenery around religious buildings. In the oldest understanding of Shinto, the forests themselves are the true shrines. The buildings, with their distinctive torii gates and elegant wooden architecture, are merely markers, indicators of the sacred presence that resides in the natural world itself. The trees, the rocks, the streams, the very earth beneath them. These are the true objects of veneration. This reverence for forests is ancient in Japan, predating the formal establishment of Shinto as an organized religion. In the earliest days of Japanese spiritual practice, people understood that certain places in nature held power, held presence, held something that could only be described as divine. Mountains were sacred because of their size and permanence. Waterfalls were sacred because of their power and beauty, and forests, particularly forests of ancient trees, were sacred because they seemed to embody time itself, to serve as bridges between the world of humans and the world of spirits. Certain tree species became particularly associated with sacred spaces. The Japanese cedar, or Cryptomeria japonica, was prized not just for its impressive size and longevity, but for the clean, purifying scent of its wood. Japanese cypress, with its beautiful pale wood and natural resistance to decay, was considered suitable for the most sacred shrine buildings. Camphor trees, which can live for over 1,000 years and grow to enormous sizes, were often treated as dwelling places for kami, their great hollow trunks seen as natural shrines. Even today, throughout Japan, you can find individual trees that are treated as sacred objects. These shinboku, or god trees, are marked with shiminawa, thick ropes made of rice straw, and shide, the lightning bolt-shaped paper streamers that indicate the presence of a kami. Some of these trees are truly ancient, specimens that have stood for 800, 1,000, even 1,500 years. They're often found on shrine grounds, but not always. Some stand alone in forests, in fields, by roadsides, marked and honored, protected by the reverence of the surrounding community. The connection between forests and spirituality in Japan goes beyond individual trees or shrine groves. There's a broader understanding deeply embedded in Japanese culture that forests are good for the human soul. This understanding has found modern expression in the practice of Shinrin-yoku, or forest bathing. Unlike what the name might suggest, forest bathing doesn't involve water. Instead, it's about immersing yourself in the atmosphere of the forest, allowing yourself to be fully present in that environment, using all your senses to connect with the natural world around you. The practice has gained scientific support in recent years, with research showing that time spent in forests can lower blood pressure, reduce stress hormones, boost immune function, and improve overall mood and well-being. But for the Japanese, this knowledge isn't new. They've understood for centuries that forests heal, that they restore, that they provide something essential that humans need but can't always name. As you walk deeper into these ancient Japanese forests, you begin to understand this healing quality experientially. It's not just about the beauty, though the beauty is undeniable. It's about something more subtle, something that happens to your nervous system when you spend time among very old trees. Your breathing slows, your thoughts, which may have been racing just an hour ago, begin to settle. The constant background anxiety that characterizes so much of modern life starts to ease. You become aware of your body in a different way, aware of the simple fact of being alive, of breathing, of moving through space. The sounds of the forest contribute to this effect. In these ancient woods, especially in places like Yakushima or the deep mountain forests of Honshu, the soundscape is rich and complex. There's the constant underlying rustle of leaves moving in the breeze. There's the occasional crack of a branch, the soft thud of a cone or nut falling to the forest floor. There are birds everywhere, though you often hear them more than see them. The Japanese bush warbler, with its distinctive call that sounds like the Japanese word for beautiful, hokekyo. The varied tit with its chattering calls. The pygmy woodpecker, smallest of its family, tapping away at bark with a sound more like a pen on paper than the dramatic drumming of its larger relatives. In some forests, particularly those at higher elevations, you might hear the calls of Japanese macaques, the iconic snow monkeys of Japan. These intelligent primates are often found in forested areas, moving through the trees in troops, calling to each other with a variety of vocalizations. If you're very lucky and very quiet, you might catch a glimpse of them, watching you with those two human eyes, equally curious about you as you are about them. The Yakushima macaque is a subspecies found only on Yakushima Island. They're slightly smaller than their mainland cousins, and they've become quite accustomed to human presence, particularly along popular hiking trails. But even seeing them regularly doesn't diminish the thrill of encountering them. There's something profound about making eye contact with another primate in the wild, about recognizing in their gaze something that feels like understanding, like a shared consciousness of being alive in this moment, in this place. Other wildlife is more secretive. The sika deer that inhabit these forests are shy and elusive, though you might spot them at dawn or dusk, moving silently through the undergrowth. On Yakushima, there's a unique subspecies, the Yakushima sika deer, smaller than mainland deer and well adapted to life in these dense, misty forests. Birds are abundant, but often hard to see, hidden in the dense canopy. The endangered Japanese wood pigeon, the Ryukyu green pigeon, various species of thrushes and flycatchers all make their homes in these ancient woods. But it's not necessary to see wildlife to feel the aliveness of these forests. The presence of life is everywhere. It's in the evidence of animal activity, the overturned leaves where a deer has been foraging, the stripped bark where a macaque has been feeding, the scattered feathers where a bird has preened. It's in the insects that hum and buzz and flit through the air, the butterflies that occasionally drift past in bursts of unexpected color. It's in the knowledge that beneath the surface, in the soil, in the rotting logs, in every crack and crevice, there are countless organisms living out their lives, part of the vast, interconnected web of life that makes up a healthy forest ecosystem. The seasonal changes in these forests are profound and beautiful. Spring arrives with a gentle hesitation. The deciduous trees, which in mixed forests grow alongside the evergreen conifers, begin to bud and leaf out. In lower elevations and in warmer regions, cherry trees bloom, their flowers creating brief, exquisite displays of pink and white. The Japanese have elevated the appreciation of cherry blossoms to an art form, and hanami, the practice of flower viewing, brings millions of people to parks and gardens throughout the country. But in the forests, away from the cultivated varieties, wild cherry trees bloom in quieter, more modest profusion. Their flowers a gift for whoever happens to be passing by. Spring is also the season of new growth, when ferns unfurl their delicate fronds, when fresh green shoots appear on the cedars and cypress trees, when the forest floor erupts in wildflowers. In some forests, you might encounter Japanese primroses, their delicate blooms adding splashes of color to the endless green. In wetter areas, irises bloom along streams. And everywhere, the bamboo, which is such a characteristic part of Japanese forests, sends up new shoots, some growing with astonishing speed, adding inches in a single day. Summer in the forest is a time of dense, almost overwhelming greenness. The canopy is at its fullest, creating deep shade beneath the trees. This is when the forests are at their most humid, when the air feels almost thick with moisture. In lowland areas and on islands like Yakushima, the subtropical influence is strong, and the vegetation takes on an almost jungle-like quality. Vines and epiphytes are everywhere. The moss seems to glow with vitality. Streams run full with snowmelt from the mountains, and with the frequent rains that characterize the season. This is also the season of cicadas, those distinctive insects whose chorus defines summer in Japan. In the forests, particularly in the afternoons, their collective song can be almost overwhelming, a rising and falling buzz that seems to come from everywhere at once. Different species have different calls, some shrill, some more melodious, and experienced listeners can identify them by sound alone. The cicadas spend most of their lives underground as nymphs, only emerging for a brief adult phase to mate and reproduce. Their presence, their abundance, is a reminder of the unseen life that exists beneath the surface, the complex ecology of the forest soil. Summer is also typhoon season, and in coastal forests and on islands like Yakushima, these massive storms are a regular occurrence. Typhoons can be destructive, bringing winds powerful enough to topple even large trees, bringing rain so intense that they trigger landslides and floods. But they're also part of the natural cycle, part of what shapes these forests and makes them what they are. The trees that survive are the ones that have learned to bend, to give way to the wind without breaking. The Yakusugi, in particular, have developed the ability to survive repeated typhoons. Their deep root systems and flexible wood allowing them to weather storms that would destroy lesser trees. As summer gives way to autumn, the forests undergo perhaps their most dramatic transformation. While the evergreen conifers remain green, the deciduous trees, the maples and oaks and ginkgos, begin their annual display of four-color. The Japanese have a word for this seasonal phenomenon too. They call it koyo, which refers to the changing leaves in general, or momiji, which specifically refers to the red leaves of Japanese maple trees. The appreciation of autumn leaves, momijigari, or red leaf hunting, is almost as culturally significant as the appreciation of cherry blossoms. People travel throughout the country to see the most spectacular displays, checking forecasts that predict when and where the colors will be at their peak. The transformation begins in the north, in Hokkaido, in mid to late September, and gradually sweeps south, reaching Tokyo and Kyoto in late November, and continuing into December in the warmest southern areas. In the forests, away from the cultivated Japanese maples that turn the most brilliant shades of red, the colors are more varied and subtle. There are maples, certainly, their leaves turning from green to yellow to orange to the deepest crimson, each tree following its own internal calendar, creating a patchwork of color that changes almost daily. But there are also oaks that, turn russet and bronze and gold, their leaves often holding on to their color well into winter. There are ginkgos that turn the most brilliant yellow imaginable, a yellow so bright and pure that it almost seems to glow from within, especially when backlit by the autumn sun. The rowan trees, with their clusters of bright red berries hanging like jewels among the changing leaves, provide accents of color that draw the eye upward. Birch trees, their white bark creating dramatic contrast, turn shades of butter yellow. The Japanese larch, one of the few deciduous conifers, transforms into the most delicate gold, its needles creating a soft, almost ethereal quality of light when the sun shines through them. Against the unchanging green of the cedars and cypress, these autumn colors create a beautiful contrast, a reminder that even in a landscape dominated by evergreens, there is change, there are cycles, there is the constant turning of seasons. The evergreens themselves, while they don't change color dramatically, do undergo subtle shifts. Their new growth, which was bright green in spring, has darkened and matured. Some of their older needles, having completed their multi-year lifespan, turn brown and fall, creating a soft carpet on the forest floor that releases that distinctive pine scent when crushed underfoot. Walking through a forest during peak autumn color is an experience that touches something deep in the human psyche. The air itself seems different in autumn, crisper, clearer, carrying a particular quality of light that photographers love and poets have tried for centuries to capture in words. The temperature is cool, but not cold, comfortable for walking, inviting you to spend hours wandering forest paths without the discomfort of summer's heat or winter's chill. The sounds of the forest change too in autumn. The insects that provided such a constant soundtrack in summer have mostly disappeared, their brief lives over, their eggs or pupae waiting for spring. The birds are different. Some of the summer species have migrated south, while others that spend summers farther north have arrived to spend the winter here. Their songs and calls create a different soundscape, one that feels appropriate to the season. More subdued perhaps, more contemplative. Perhaps it's the reminder of impermanence, the knowledge that this beauty is temporary, that these leaves will fall, that winter is coming. The Japanese aesthetic concept of mono no aware, often translated as a sensitivity to the transience of things, finds perhaps its most perfect expression in autumn leaves. The very fact that this beauty is fleeting makes it more poignant, more worthy of attention and appreciation. Every year the leaves turn. Every year people stop their busy lives to witness it. And every year, the experience feels both familiar and new, both expected and miraculous. Perhaps it's simply the pure aesthetic pleasure of seeing such rich colors, such variety, such intricate patterns of light and shadow. The way a single maple leaf can contain within itself a dozen different shades of red, from the palest pink at its tips to the deepest crimson at its base, with orange and yellow and even hints of purple in between. The way the afternoon sun, angling low through the trees, turns the yellow leaves of ginkgos into what looks like living gold, so bright you almost have to squint to look at them. The way the forest floor, carpeted in fallen leaves, creates a crunching, rustling soundtrack for your walk, each step releasing the scent of decay and renewal, that distinctive autumn smell that's both ending and beginning, both death and the promise of next year's growth. The way the light changes moment by moment as clouds pass overhead, now illuminating this section of forest, now that one, creating an ever-shifting display that means you could walk the same path 10 times in a day and see 10 different forests. Whatever the reason, autumn forests have inspired Japanese poets and artists for centuries, and walking through them, you understand why. In the Heian period, over 1,000 years ago, aristocrats would compose poems about autumn leaves, trying to capture in carefully chosen words the exact quality of red in a particular maple leaf, the precise emotion evoked by the sight of mountains painted in autumn color. These poems survive, collected in anthologies, studied and memorized by students, kept alive across centuries. Artists too have returned again and again to the theme of autumn in the forest. Woodblock prints showing mountains cloaked in fall color, with tiny human figures dwarfed by the landscape. Paintings on scrolls that capture the delicate tracery of bare branches against the sky, or the rich texture of leaves still clinging to their trees. Photographs now, capturing what the earlier artists tried to suggest, the overwhelming beauty of a forest at peak color. Winter brings its own distinct character to the forests. In the mountains, snow blankets the ground, transforming the landscape into something stark and beautiful. The bare branches of deciduous trees create intricate patterns against the sky, like calligraphy written in wood against a grey or brilliant blue background, depending on the weather. The snow itself changes the quality of light in the forest, reflecting and amplifying it, making everything seem brighter, cleaner, more defined. The evergreens, their branches heavy with snow take on sculptural forms. Each tree becomes a work of art, its shape dictated by how the snow has fallen and accumulated. A branch droops under the weight of snow, creating a gentle curve. Another branch, protected by the ones above it, remains nearly bare. The snow creates patterns and textures, highlighting the tree's structure in a way that's invisible during other seasons. When the sun comes out after a snowfall, the forest becomes magical, the snow crystals catching and refracting the light, creating sparkles and rainbows that seem to float in the air. Sound becomes even more muffled than usual, absorbed by the snow. Walking through a snow-covered forest is to experience a kind of silence that's increasingly rare in our modern world. Not the absence of sound, but a profound quiet where every sound that does occur, the crunch of your boots in the snow, the occasional plop of snow falling from a branch, a bird call in the distance, stands out with remarkable clarity. Your breathing seems loud in this quiet. Your heartbeat becomes perceptible. You become aware of yourself as a physical presence in a way that the usual background noise of life usually obscures. The forest grows contemplative in winter, waiting. The trees, particularly the deciduous ones, are in a state of dormancy, their growth paused, their energy conserved. But this dormancy isn't death, it's rest, it's preparation. Beneath the bark, beneath the snow-covered ground, life continues its slow processes. The trees are very much alive, just quiet, patient, waiting for the signal that spring is coming and it's time to wake up, time to begin the cycle again. In lower elevations and in southern regions, winter is milder. There might be frost that turns the moss silver and brittle for a few hours each morning, but little or no snow. The forest remains accessible, walkable, inviting even in what is theoretically the least hospitable season. The evergreen forests remain green, a welcome sight in the generally brown landscape of winter Japan. The dark green of cedars and cypress provides a kind of visual warmth, a reminder that life persists, that growth continues even if it's slowed, that the forest is never truly dormant. Birds that migrate south for the winter arrive, adding new songs to the forest soundscape. These winter visitors, coming from even colder regions to the north, find Japan's winters relatively mild and hospitable. They move through the forest in mixed flocks, sometimes containing several species, working methodically through the trees, gleaning insects from bark crevices, finding seeds and berries that persist through winter. Watching them, is to witness cooperation and adaptation. Each species with its own ecological niche, all of them making use of the resources the forest provides, even in its dormant season. And beneath the surface, beneath the leaf litter and the moss, life continues its essential work. Fungi, those often overlooked organisms that are neither plant nor animal, are everywhere in winter forests, breaking down fallen leaves and dead wood, recycling nutrients, making them available for the next generation of growth. Some of the fungi produce visible fruiting bodies, mushrooms that emerge even in winter, creating spots of color and strange shapes in the otherwise muted landscape. Others work invisibly, their thread-like mycelia spreading through the soil, connecting trees to each other, facilitating the exchange of nutrients and chemical signals in what scientists now call the wood wide web. The forest in winter rewards those willing to look closely, to pay attention. The subtle beauty of frost patterns on leaves and bark, the delicate architecture of bare branches revealed against the sky, the tracks in the snow that tell stories of who passed this way and what they were doing. Deer tracks leading to a browsing site where they've been eating bark from young trees. The distinctive hopping pattern of a bird's tracks as it searched for seeds. Perhaps, if you're very lucky, the large paw prints of a bear who emerged briefly from hibernation or who hasn't yet settled in for the winter. Throughout all these seasons, throughout all the changes that mark the passage of time, the ancient trees stand. They've witnessed countless springs, countless autumns, countless winters. Each spring brings the same renewal, the same greening, the same burst of growth. Each summer brings the same deepening, the same density, the same heat and growth and abundance. Each autumn brings the same transformation, the same display of color, the same gentle decline toward dormancy. Each winter brings the same quiet, the same waiting, the same patient endurance. They've survived typhoons and droughts, fire and flood. They've watched human history unfold around them, watched villages grow into towns, watched temples rise and fall, watched centuries of human activity come and go like brief seasons. They were here before there were humans in these forests. They were here when the first people arrived, looking for shelter, for food, for resources. They watched as these people developed culture, language, spirituality, art. They watched as simple villages became organized societies, as kingdoms rose and fell, as wars were fought and peace was made. as technology advanced from the most basic tools to the sophisticated civilization of modern Japan. Through it all, the trees stood, growing, changing with the seasons, but fundamentally unchanging. A cedar tree that was a sapling 1,000 years ago had the same basic structure, the same life processes, the same relationship with its environment that it has today. It was doing the same thing then that it's doing now, photosynthesizing light into energy, drawing water and nutrients up from the soil, growing slowly but steadily, adding ring after ring after ring, reaching toward the sky, spreading its roots deeper into the earth. And now, as a visitor to these forests, you become part of that long, long story. Your footsteps on the ancient trails join the footsteps of countless others who have walked here before you. The medieval monks who used these paths as pilgrimage routes, walking for weeks or months to reach the sacred sites, seeking spiritual enlightenment or fulfillment of a vow, carrying offerings, reciting prayers, their footsteps wearing the stones smooth. The loggers who came to harvest the trees, who spent their lives in these forests, who knew every tree, who cut selectively, understanding that they needed to leave enough for the future, for the next generation. The naturalists who came to study and document, who catalogued species, who drew and photographed and took notes, trying to understand how these ecosystems worked, marveling at their complexity and diversity. The soldiers who passed through during times of war, bringing their concerns and fears with them, finding perhaps a moment of peace in the unchanging stability of the forest. The artists who came seeking inspiration, finding in the forest images and emotions that they tried to capture in paint or ink or words or photography. The modern hikers and forest bathers seeking connection and peace, carrying their stress and their worries into the forest and finding them somehow lightened by the time they emerge. The scientists still coming to study with more sophisticated equipment and understanding than their predecessors, but the same fundamental curiosity, still finding new species, new interactions, new mysteries to investigate in these ancient ecosystems. All of you, all of us, passing through these ancient woods, leaving behind nothing but footprints that the next rain will wash away, taking away nothing but memories, and perhaps a sense of having touched something larger and more enduring than our brief human lives. Each of us thinking our thoughts, feeling our feelings, experiencing our version of the forest, yet all of us connected by the simple fact of being here. In this place, under these trees, breathing this air, walking this ground, some of the most profound forest experiences in Japan come from walking the Kumano Kodo, a network of ancient pilgrimage routes that wind through the mountainous Kii Peninsula in the southern part of Honshu, Japan's main island. These routes have been in use for over 1,000 years, connecting 3 sacred shrines known collectively as the Kumano Sanzan. Emperors and commoners alike have walked these paths, seeking spiritual purification and renewal, seeking blessings, seeking answers to questions they perhaps couldn't even properly articulate. In 2004, the Kumano Kodo was designated as a UNESCO World Heritage Site, one of only 2 pilgrimage routes in the world to receive this honor, the other being the Camino de Santiago in Spain. The pilgrimage routes pass through some of the most beautiful forests in Japan, forests that feel simultaneously wild and welcoming, forests that have been touched by human hands for centuries but never truly tamed. The Nakahechi route, the most popular path and the one most commonly walked by modern pilgrims and hikers, takes walkers through dense groves of cedar and cypress, their straight trunks rising like the columns of a vast outdoor cathedral. The trail climbs ridgelines that offer sweeping views over the surrounding mountains, layer upon layer of forested peaks stretching to the horizon, often wreathed in mist and cloud. It passes through small mountain villages that seem frozen in time, places where traditional houses with their heavy tiled roofs still stand, where rice paddies climb the hillsides in intricate terraces, where old women tend gardens and greet passing pilgrims with quiet courtesy. These villages have served hikers and pilgrims for centuries, offering food and lodging, providing hot baths and comfortable beds, maintaining the trails and the shrines, keeping alive the traditions and stories of the pilgrimage. The trails themselves are marked by oji, small shrines that served as rest stops and places of prayer for pilgrims. There are 99 of these oji scattered along the various routes, each one marking a stage of the journey, each one offering a place to pause, to rest, to reflect, to pray. Some of these oji are simple affairs, just a small roof protecting a stone marker or statue. Others are more elaborate, with small buildings and sacred trees and carefully maintained grounds. Some of these oji are surrounded by enormous old trees, cedars and camphor trees that have stood for 800 years or more. At Takahara, there's a grove of ancient camphor trees their massive trunks wrapped in the Shimenawa ropes that mark them as sacred. All of their branches mysteriously point south, toward Nachi Falls and the sacred sites. Local legend says the trees turn to honor the pilgrims passing by, but science suggests it's the prevailing winds that have shaped their growth. Either way, the effect is striking. Dozens of ancient trees, all leaning and reaching in the same direction, as if showing the way. Walking the Kumanokodo is not just a physical journey, but a spiritual one, regardless of your religious beliefs or lack thereof. The ancient paths, worn smooth by centuries of feet, invite a kind of walking meditation. There's something about following in the literal footsteps of so many who came before, about walking paths where emperors and monks and farmers and warriors and poets all walked, all seeking something, all hoping for something, all carrying their particular burdens and joys and questions. Your mind, freed from the usual distractions of modern life, freed from screens and notifications and the constant barrage of information and stimulation, begins to wander and settle in equal measure. Thoughts arise and fall away. Worries that seemed pressing just yesterday begin to feel less urgent. Problems that seemed unsolvable begin to show possible solutions, or begin to seem less like problems and more like simply facts of life to be accepted and worked with. You become aware of your breathing, of the way it changes as you climb a steep section, becomes labored, quick, then settles again as the path levels out. You become aware of the rhythm of your steps, the way your feet find purchase on the stones, the way your body automatically adjusts to the terrain, leaning into uphills, holding back on downhills, stepping over roots and rocks without conscious thought. You become aware of the way your body moves through space, the swing of your arms, the slight rotation of your hips, the way your balance shifts subtly with each step. Walking becomes not just a means of getting from here to there, but an experience in itself, something to be savored, something that occupies your full attention without requiring effort. The forest around you becomes not just scenery, but a presence, something alive and aware, something that acknowledges your passage, even as it remains fundamentally itself. You become conscious of the birds calling from the canopy, their songs and calls creating a soundscape that shifts and changes as different species take their turns. You notice the way the light changes moment by moment as clouds pass overhead, as the sun moves across the sky, as you move in and out of shadows. You notice the smells, the clean scent of cedar and cypress, the rich smell of earth and decaying leaves, occasionally the sweet scent of some flowering plant, occasionally the more pungent smell of decay, where a fallen tree is slowly returning to the soil. You notice the feel of the air against your skin, cool in the shadows, warmer where the sun breaks through. The way it changes from dry to humid as you pass through different microclimates. The most famous approach to the shrines is the Demon Zaka, a cobblestone staircase that climbs through towering old cedars. The name means roughly the approach to the Great Gate, and that's exactly what it is, the final approach to the sacred precincts of Kumano Nachi Taisha. The stairs are steep, over 260 of them, rising through 600 meters of ascent. It's not an easy climb, especially after you've already been walking for hours or days along the trail. Your legs burn, your breath comes hard. You have to pause frequently to rest. But the climb is transformed into something sacred by the setting. The cedars on either side are enormous, truly ancient specimens that must be seen to be believed. Their trunks are so large that it would take several people with arms outstretched to encircle them. They rise straight and true, disappearing up into the canopy high overhead. Their bark is deeply furrowed, creating patterns and textures that your eyes trace as you climb. Moss covers the stones of the stairs and clings to the trees in thick, soft layers. It drips from branches. It fills the cracks between the stones. It creates a soft cushion on either side of the path. When it's been raining, and it often has been, in this region that sees extraordinary precipitation, the moss glows with an almost supernatural green, as if lit from within. Mist often hangs in the air here, creating an atmosphere that seems to exist outside normal time. The light becomes diffused, softened, given a quality that's hard to describe but impossible to forget. Sounds are muffled. Visibility is limited to just a certain distance, beyond which the world fades into white nothingness. You exist in a bubble of perception, able to see and hear and feel only what's immediately around you. The stairs beneath your feet, the trees on either side, the mist all around. As you climb, pausing to catch your breath, leaning against the cool stone of a marker or the rough bark of a tree, you become aware of the countless others who have made this same ascent, not just in your imagination, but almost physically, as if their presence has somehow impressed itself upon this place. Medieval nobles in elaborate processions, accompanied by servants and musicians, making pilgrimage as much for political reasons as spiritual ones, their fine robes getting soaked by the same mists you're experiencing. Buddhist monks in simple robes, carrying only a small pack with their few possessions, walking these stairs as part of a training regimen that demanded physical and spiritual discipline. Farmers seeking blessing for their crops, hoping that the kami of Kumano would ensure a good harvest, would protect their fields from typhoons and droughts and pests. Warriors seeking strength for battle, seeking the favor of the gods before heading off to war, hoping to return alive, hoping to acquit themselves with honor. Merchants seeking prosperity, hoping their businesses would flourish, that their trades would be profitable, that they would be able to provide for their families. Parents seeking health for their children, carrying sick infants or leading feverish toddlers, desperate and hopeful in equal measure. Widows and widowers seeking comfort in their grief. Young people seeking direction for their lives. Old people seeking peace as they approach death. All of them climbing these same stones, praying to these same gods, seeking connection with something larger than themselves, something that could help, could heal, could guide, could comfort. And in walking where they walked, in touching the same stones, in breathing the same air, in seeing the same trees, though grown larger and older, you're connected to them in a way that transcends time, transcends culture, transcends all the things that might seem to separate you. At the top, you emerge into the precincts of Kumano Nachi Taisha, one of the 3 grand shrines. The shrine buildings are beautiful, with their distinctive vermilion paint that seems to glow in any kind of light, and their elegant architectural details that speak to centuries of craftsmanship and care. The roofs curve gracefully, the wooden beams are perfectly fitted, the decorative elements are both functional and aesthetic, every detail considered, every choice deliberate. But even more striking than the shrine buildings themselves is the waterfall visible from the shrine grounds. Nachi Falls, Japan's tallest waterfall, plunges nearly 500 feet down a rock face, its white water a dramatic contrast against the dark stone and the green forest that surrounds it. The sound of the falls is constant, a deep roar that you feel in your chest as much as hear with your ears. Even from a distance, you can feel the vibration, the power of all that water falling, falling, falling. The waterfall itself is considered sacred, a kami in its own right, a physical manifestation of divine power and purity. A small shrine stands at its base, accessible via another set of stairs allowing pilgrims to approach as close as possible to the falls, to feel the spray on their faces, to be enveloped in the sound and the mist, to experience directly this manifestation of natural power that has been falling in this exact spot for as long as humans have been in Japan, and for countless millennia before that. Standing there, looking at this waterfall that has been falling for longer than human memory, listening to the constant roar of its waters, feeling the mist on your face, cold and fresh and somehow purifying, you understand something fundamental about Japanese spirituality. The divine is not separate from nature. The divine is not something that exists in some distant heaven, unreachable and unknowable. The divine is here, now, in this waterfall, in these trees, in this rock, in this moss, in this air you're breathing. The waterfall is sacred, not because someone decided it should be, not because some religious authority declared it so, but because it embodies qualities that humans have always found worthy of reverence, that call forth a sense of awe and wonder and humility. Power, yes. The sheer force of all that water is undeniable, but also permanence. This waterfall has been here longer than any human institution, longer than any empire or dynasty or civilization. It will continue to be here long after all our current concerns have been forgotten. Beauty, certainly. The aesthetic perfection of white water against dark stone, against green forest, the way the light plays on the falling water, creating rainbows when conditions are right, the way the mist diffuses the light and creates that soft, ethereal quality that painters and photographers spend their lives trying to capture. And purity. Water falling from such a height is, in a very real sense, purified by the process, aerated, cleansed. And the association of water with spiritual purification is ancient and deep in Japanese culture. Before entering shrine precincts, you wash your hands and mouth. This is not just practical hygiene, though, it's that too. It's spiritual cleansing, a symbolic but also real act of preparing yourself to approach the sacred, of leaving behind the contamination of the mundane world, of making yourself fit to stand in the presence of the divine. These are the qualities of kami, qualities not confined to waterfalls, but found everywhere in the natural world for those who know how to look, how to feel, how to be present enough to recognize them. They're in the ancient trees, standing patient and strong. They're in the mountains, massive and enduring. They're in the rivers, flowing and changing, yet constant. They're in the rocks, solid and silent. They're in the wind, invisible but powerful. They're in the sun and moon and stars. They're everywhere, and approaching them with awareness, with respect, with a kind of openness, allows us to connect with something larger than ourselves. This understanding, this sense of the divine presence in nature, is perhaps most accessible in forests. There's something about being among trees, especially old trees, that opens us to this kind of awareness. Maybe it's the scale, the way ancient trees dwarf us and remind us of our smallness, our relative insignificance in the grand scheme of things. And somehow, that recognition is comforting rather than diminishing, because it means our problems are all so small, manageable, temporary. Maybe it's the complexity, the overwhelming richness of life that exists in a healthy forest ecosystem. The countless species all living their lives, all connected, all dependent on each other in ways both obvious and subtle, all part of a whole that's so much greater than any of its individual parts. Standing in a forest, you're surrounded by life, by the evidence of life, by the sounds and smells and sights of millions of organisms all going about their business. And you're part of that, connected to it, woven into it. Maybe it's the timelessness, the sense that we're moving through something that existed long before us and will exist long after we're gone. These trees were here before you were born. They'll likely be here after you die, unless something catastrophic happens. They've seen countless human lives come and go. They've watched the drama of human existence play out again and again. The same essential stories, the same joys and sorrows, the same hopes and fears, the same triumphs and defeats. Or maybe it's simpler than all of that. Maybe we're just responding to something built into our biology, some deep evolutionary memory that knows forest as home, as sanctuary, as the place where our ancestors lived and from which we emerged as a species. We spent most of our evolutionary history in forests and savannas, in landscapes dominated by trees. Our eyes evolved to see in the particular kind of light that filters through leaves, to detect the subtle variations in green that might indicate food or danger. Our ears evolved to pick out the sounds that matter in a forest, the snap of a twig that might indicate a predator, the rustle of leaves that might indicate prey, the call of a bird that might lead to food or water. Our sense of smell evolved to detect the subtle scents that carry information in forested environments, the smell of decay, that indicates rich soil, the smell of sap that indicates injury to a tree, the smell of flowers or fruit that indicates food. Our sense of touch evolved to navigate through dense vegetation, to climb trees, to distinguish between different textures of bark and leaf and soil. Our very bodies are adapted to forest life, to climbing and hanging and moving through three-dimensional space in ways that few other primates can match. Maybe when we enter a forest, especially an old forest, especially a forest as ancient and well-preserved as those in Japan, we're simply coming home to the environment that shaped us, that made us what we are. And on some level deeper than conscious thought, our bodies and brains recognize this. Relax into it, respond to it with a sense of rightness, of belonging, of being exactly where we're supposed to be. Whatever the reason, the effect is undeniable and has been documented scientifically in recent years. People emerge from time spent in these forests changed in some measurable, quantifiable way. Their blood pressure is lower. Their levels of stress hormones like cortisol are reduced. Their immune function is boosted, with increases in natural killer cells that fight disease. Their mood improves. Their ability to concentrate improves. Their sleep improves. Their sense of well-being improves. But the changes go deeper than these measurable markers. Not dramatically, usually, not in ways that are immediately obvious or life-altering in a single visit, but change nonetheless, in ways that accumulate, that build over time if you return to forests regularly, if you make a practice of forest bathing, of spending time among old trees. Calmer, more centered, more aware of the present moment, rather than lost in regrets about the past or anxieties about the future, more connected to something larger than themselves, whether they call that something nature or spirit or God, or simply the web of life. More appreciative of beauty in all its forms, from the grand spectacle of a mountain vista to the intimate perfection of a moss garden. More patient with themselves and others, having witnessed the patience of trees that grow so slowly, that work toward goals they'll never see completed, that give shade to generations they'll never know. More accepting of the slow, cyclical nature of life and growth and change and decay and renewal. The ancient forests of Japan offer this gift to anyone willing to receive it. They ask nothing in return except respect, care, awareness. Walk softly as if you're entering a sacred space, because you are. Leave no trace. Take nothing but photographs and memories. disturb nothing, so that others who come after you can experience what you experienced. Give back what you can, whether that's supporting conservation efforts, whether that's volunteering for trail maintenance, whether that's simply spreading the word about these remarkable places, helping to ensure that future generations will also have the opportunity to walk among these ancient trees, to breathe this air, to feel this peace. As our journey through these forests comes to a close, as we prepare to return to the world of cities and schedules and digital noise, as we ready ourselves to re-enter the stream of ordinary life with its demands and responsibilities and constant rush, take a moment to imprint this experience on your memory. Really take it in, hold it, make it yours. Remember the feel of moss beneath your feet, that soft, yielding, living carpet that cushioned every step. Remember the scent of cedar and earth, clean and resinous and somehow green, a smell that can't quite be described but once experienced is never forgotten. Remember the quality of light filtering through ancient leaves, that dappled, dancing, ever-changing pattern of brightness and shadow, that komorebi that the Japanese knew was special enough to deserve its own word. Remember the silence, the profound, encompassing silence that exists in the heart of old forests, broken only by the calls of birds, the rustle of leaves, the distant rush of water, each sound seeming both very far away and very close, each sound sharp and clear in the overall quiet. Remember the sense of time expanding, of past and present and future all existing simultaneously in the presence of trees that have lived for thousands of years, that knew the ancient past and will see the distant future, that bridge the before and the after, and hold them both in their slow, patient growing. Remember how you felt standing before the Jomonsugi, looking up at that impossibly ancient trunk, trying to comprehend the passage of time that tree represents, trying to imagine all the history that has occurred during its life, all the human stories that have played out in its shadow. Remember the stillness that came over you in that moment, the way your busy mind settled, the way something in you relaxed and opened and became quiet. These memories are yours to keep, to return to whenever you need a reminder of what matters, of what endures, of what deserves protection and reverence. The ancient forests of Japan will continue to stand, continue to grow, continue to offer their quiet wisdom to anyone who seeks it. They've been doing it for centuries, for millennia. They'll continue doing it long after we're gone. That's the nature of ancient things, of old trees. of forests that have learned patience as their fundamental virtue. And perhaps that's the greatest gift these forests offer. Not just beauty, though they are beautiful beyond what words can fully capture. Not just peace, though they are peaceful in ways our busy world rarely allows, but perspective. A reminder that our human dramas, as important as they feel in the moment, as all-consuming as they seem when we're in the middle of them, are brief flickers in a much longer story. The trees were here before us. They'll be here after us. And in the meantime, they offer us shade, shelter, oxygen to breathe, beauty to contemplate, and a place to remember what it means to be part of the natural world rather than separate from it, to be connected rather than isolated, to be home. So if you find yourself with the opportunity to visit Japan, to travel to its ancient forests, whether Yakushima with its Yakusugi, whether the Kumano Kodo with its pilgrimage trails, whether any of the other sacred forest places scattered throughout this island nation, take it, make the journey, walk among the old trees, breathe the forest air deep into your lungs, listen to the forest sounds with your whole attention. Feel the forest ground beneath your feet. Let yourself be small and temporary in the presence of something vast and enduring. Let yourself be healed by the ancient medicine of trees and time. And if you can't make the physical journey yet, if Japan is too far or too expensive or simply not possible right now, then make it in your imagination. Close your eyes and picture yourself there, among the cedars, among the moss, among the filtered light and the quiet. Use these words as a guide, as a map, as an invitation. Let the peace of those places seep into you through imagination until the day when you can experience them directly. Let them remind you that there are still places in this world where time moves slowly, where life is measured in centuries rather than minutes, where patience and persistence and quiet growth are the dominant themes, where the divine is not distant but immediate, present in every tree, every stone, every drop of water. These forests exist. They're real. They're waiting. And they'll continue to wait, as they've waited for thousands of years, offering their shelter and their wisdom to anyone willing to walk beneath their ancient branches and listen, truly listen, to what they have to say about time and patience and endurance and the long, slow, steady work of living well. Thank you for joining me on this journey through the ancient forests of Japan. If you enjoyed this peaceful exploration, I'd be grateful if you'd take a moment to like this video and subscribe to the channel. It helps me continue creating these gentle travels to beautiful places around our world. Until next time, sleep well, dream peacefully, and remember that somewhere in this world, ancient trees are growing, patient and strong, waiting for the day you might walk in their shadows. Sweet dreams.